All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Titan Talk. We are so very pleased to be hosting Kara Lazarus and Margo Christou as today's Titan Talk speakers. As many of you know and have attended before, Titan Talks feature IWU alumni, friends, supporters, faculty, and staff who are leaders in their field who can give us expertise in a given topic. I am Keely Matheson, Director of Alumni Engagement at Illinois Wesleyan University, and I will be your host and moderator for today's talk. A few housekeeping notes. You are viewing today's webinar as an audience member, and therefore you will not have the ability to turn on your video or your microphone. Questions are encouraged, and they can be submitted through the Q&A feature or the chat at any time during the webinar. Additionally, if you have any technical issues, you may reach out to our Office of Alumni Engagement at 309-556-3145. A recording of today's webinar will be available to view on the Office of Alumni Engagement YouTube page, and that link will be sent to your inboxes tomorrow afternoon. Now, I'm very excited to give a brief introduction of both of our speakers. Kara, a class of 1995 grad, is the principal and founder of Think Pink Idea Consulting. For almost 2 decades, she has helped companies evaluate and facilitate the generation of new ideas. Prior to starting her company, she was a marketer on top consumer brands such as Yoplait yogurt, Pillsbury baked goods, and Coley Grip. In addition, Kara spent several years marketing urology and gynecology medical devices to physicians and patients around the world. Kara holds an MBA from the Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth College and received a BA in Mathematics and Economics from Illinois Wesleyan University. Kara lives with her family in Minneapolis, where she spends her free time running, cross-country skiing, and providing support for families with children facing complex medical challenges. Margo is the founder of Connexa Search, a boutique executive search firm, and before moving into the human resources and executive search space, Margo held executive roles in marketing, strategy, and business development. Her expertise is anchored in many years of leadership at companies such as One Medical, Dun & Bradstreet, and Monitor Deloitte. Margo has a BS from Cornell and an MBA from Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth. An East Coaster born and bred, Margo now lives in California with her husband and 2 children. We are so pleased to have these speakers with us today. Again, thank you both, and I will turn it over to you.
Good. Well, thanks so much for having Margo and me today. We are really excited to present this information to you. It's something that has really been a passion project of ours and something that we feel pretty strongly about, but something that you'll see as we'll talk about today is ever changing right now in this post-pandemic world that we are living in. So I'm going to take you just briefly through the agenda here. We'll do some introductions, although Kaylee did fabulous introductions of us. Margo, I don't know what else we can share about ourselves there, but I'll talk a little bit about just what is flexible work and kind of why people are interested in flexible work. There might be some ideas there and some reasons that might surprise you. We'll give some considerations for how you should approach flexible work and what you need to think about. And then Margo's going to take it and really bring it to how do you even create it? So you're interested, you want to pursue it. How do you create it? And then not only that, how do you succeed in that? So our presentation today is only going to be about 25-30 minutes. And we really want to save the end for Q&A at the end. We've done this presentation a number of times before, and we find that that's really the fruitful part when we can engage in conversation and answer some of the questions that you all have. So Margo and I met back in 1997 when we were first-year business school students at the Tuck School, as Kaylee mentioned. This is a picture of us. As you can see from probably our images on the side, we have aged a little bit. This was many moons ago. But as Kaylee mentioned, I live in Minneapolis. So I had a fabulous time at Illinois Wesleyan. I was involved in the Math Society, the Economics Society. I played soccer for a year and really just enjoyed my time there. So it's exciting to kind of be back, but I wish I could be back on campus. That would be more fun to get to see that. So again, my background included work in marketing, both at General Mills and a medical device firm, but I've really focused for the past 17 years on owning this company. Most of my work is focused on qualitative research. So I'm an interviewer. I lead focus groups. I lead a lot of one-on-one interviews like this in this office right here. And it's really been a great transition for me from marketing. Flexible work is important to me for a couple of reasons, but one was that my husband had a job where he travels most of the time. And so, knowing we wanted to have kids and knowing that somebody in our household really needed to be more in control of their schedule, it was very appealing for me. I'd also say that, for my last couple of years in the corporate world, I used to get the Sunday scaries every Sunday night. It was years long. I was just somebody who did not enjoy sitting at a desk 5 days a week, especially in the limited summer times we have. It would be 80 and sunny out, and I'd be sitting at my desk thinking, oh, this isn't the right decision for me. But so glad I made that pivot to owning my own company and being able to have that flexibility. So Margo, how about for you?
Thank you. Yeah, the introduction was covered most of it, which was wonderful. I'd say for me, I found my calling about 4 years ago. So when I pivoted into executive search, not only because it's flexible, but also because I truly love the work and don't feel like I'm working when I'm doing it, which is amazing. And a lot of what I'm going to share today and that we can talk about in the Q&A is really a reflection of the experience that I've had talking to clients and candidates, which is especially relevant right now in the ecosystem that we find ourselves in with regard to employment. So I'm really happy to bring that experience to this conversation, and I'll just hand it over to you, Kara.
Great. Okay. So we wanted to start today just with a quick poll. We wanted to see, as you are here and interested in this presentation, we're curious if you are here as an employee. Do you want to learn about flexible work as an employee? Do you want to learn about it as an employer? Or are you looking for both, kind of from the employee side and the employer side? So go ahead and you can quickly pick your selection there. Good. Okay, we can go ahead, Hannah, and end that. So you can see kind of a mix there. So a lot here, about a third looking at employee, but a bulk of you want to hear it, talk about it from both the employee standpoint and the employer standpoint. So that's great to get that information. And you'll see kind of as Margo and I go throughout this presentation, hopefully you'll be able to take things for both sides of that. Okay. Hannah, if you wouldn't mind taking that down, we will go on to our next slide. So stop sharing. Okay. Okay, so before we even get into flexible work, we wanted to set the stage and help everyone understand, how are we even thinking about flexible work and what are some different ways that you can work flexibly. So Margo and I have 5 different buckets that we've come up with in talking to people. And I'm going to illustrate it for you here today by showing Illinois Wesleyan alums that are doing this type of flexible work. Now, the first bucket, and this one is remote or hybrid work. This has obviously grown tremendously, and a lot of our presentation today is going to be focused on this because this is the hot topic, a hot button topic when it comes to flexible work these days. So this is Tim Lindbergh. He's a 96. He works as a communications manager at State Farm. He and his team are in this hybrid model. And for him, the reason why it's really important for him is, one, he has 5 kids. So, exhausting just to think about how he manages all 5 of those. But also he commutes an hour each way to work. And so by having this flexible arrangement, it helps him just to be more intentional about how he plans and how he uses his time. Our next bucket is looking at reduced hours. So maybe you don't work the full, traditional 40 hours a week. So this is Erica Moore Nowak. Erica's near and dear to my heart. She was my roommate for most of my time when I was at Wesleyan. Shout out to 221, room 221 in Gulick, where we lived for a number of years. But Erica is a director of contract payer contracting at a medical device firm. So when she was about to have her third kid, she had to move away from a health insurance company that she was working at. Her husband, Jeff Nowak, who's also an alum of Illinois Wesleyan, was doing a PICU fellowship. So she moved to a new town, 3 young kids under the age of 3 or 4 at the time. And so she wanted to work part-time. So she actually worked 0.1 for her insurance company. So I don't feel like you hear about a lot of people getting a job where they can work 0.1, but she did it. And then as she moved back into the same city as that company, she was able to ramp up her time. She never went back to full-time because she always found that if she could stay at sort of that 0.9, it would give her that flexibility and able to do, what she wanted with it. But one of the things that she loved about, having flexible work was she felt like it allowed her to stay in the game, right? So she was able to work, she was able to have one company on her resume for 20 years and show kind of promotions and her progress throughout the way. So that was an important way for her to be able to do that. Another option is to work alternative hours. So potentially you don't necessarily work 9 to 5. Maybe you work early in the morning. Maybe you work at night. Maybe you work a chunk in the morning and a chunk at night. So this is Neil Rubenstein. He's a 96 also. So he works for a pharmaceutical marketing agency. He works mostly from home. And he's just not tied to that 9 to 5. So he works kind of just when he can work to get his job done. And he likes it for his mental health and the flexibility that it gives him, and he looks at a traditional 9 to 5 in the office job and he says he just can't imagine going back. So that's another way you can pursue flexible work. Another large way is to do what we've called here contract work. So that might be a consultant, that might be gig work. As we talk so much about the gig economy, this is really growing in its importance. So this is Jennifer Nebbit, and she is a 94. And before she went out on her own, she had worked for 10 years. She kind of came to a crossroads where a company said, you're going to have to move with us to another city. She had young kids. She didn't want to do it. And so it led her into the consulting world. And so she was able to leverage all that experience she had in the past and use that to get some flexibility in her life. And she said sometimes she worked 20 hours a week. Sometimes she worked 60 hours a week. It just really ebbed and flowed. But she felt like, again, she had so much control over it. And she loved the fact that she got to take on all these different projects and get to work with people in different countries and learn just so much more, having that flexibility in working in different areas. And then the last one is owning your own company. So this is Ellen Rank. She graduated from Wesleyan in 2016. She's a wellness and confidence coach and a consultant for a content marketing strategy company. Like, she loves flexible work because she feels like she gets to work on her own terms. She can take the projects she wants. She can take things that help her grow, just meets the needs that she has for her life and for what she wants to do. She wanted me to be very clear to point out to you that she feels like in her generation, entrepreneurship is often very glorified, but she says it's not easy. She knows that if she wants to create the life that she dreams about, it all comes down to her. And she finds that terrifying, but she also finds it empowering. And that's what she loves about flexible work. So like I said, as we go throughout today, these are kind of the 5 buckets we think about, but you're going to hear a lot sort of on that remote hybrid piece of it, because that's really what's quite relevant right now. Okay, so before we go on, we'd love for you to get a sense from you guys, why are you interested in flexible work? So if you wouldn't mind going to the chat feature and just putting in 1 or 2 reasons why you're interested in flexible work, we would love to see that. Anyone? Bueller? I'm not seeing anything. Okay, thank you, Bob. Here we go. Dislike commuting. I like it. Variability of projects. Yep, that's a great one. I'm seeing a lot about the commute and the notion that it's the future of the work world, having young kids and wanting to be with young kids. And I like the comment too, it's where everyone is headed. So these are great. Thank you for these. So I'm going to walk you through a bit about why someone might be interested in flexible work. You heard throughout those 5 buckets and some of those alums there that, caregiving is often a very common reason why people want that flexible work. You might be caring for kids. You might be in that sandwich generation where you're having to care for parents as well. So that's a huge reason why people are interested in flexible work. There's also quality of life, right? So some people just want that work-life balance. So they seek flexible work for that. It could be health reasons. It could be your own health reasons. It could be your child. It could be a sister, a brother, a grandmother that you want to focus on. You also might find out that just having flexible work just might be really good for your mental health and your own well-being. So that's another reason. We've also heard a lot about geographic preference. So, potentially you might not live in the same city as your spouse. COVID really opened up this ability to live somewhere else. And so we've seen a lot of people, going back to live near family, or perhaps they're moving, for example, out of the Bay Area and moving to a less expensive geography. So geography is another big driver of this. You might also have other businesses you're interested in, so or passion projects. So you might be working on a startup. You might have another part-time job. Maybe you're interested in starting a nonprofit, or maybe, for example, you're training for an Ironman. We had somebody tell us, their reason was, I just like to spend time outside during the day. So you might have other things that are driving you beyond that and other interests. And so maybe that flexible work allows you to pursue some of those as well. It could just be your personality as well. Like we've had a quote saying, someone told us, like, I'm an introvert and I don't like being in the office with people. So that comes up as a reason as well. Like maybe working from home, just works for you, and maybe you're okay to have that where others may not. As you think about some of these reasons we've listed above here, maybe you really do want to work full-time in a traditional office, but maybe for some of these reasons, you're not able to do that. And so, like I highlighted with Erica on that that previous slide, like maybe you want to, but you just can't, but it can help keep your career moving if you can pursue flexible work, if you want to stay in the game. We have seen and read so many articles and studies that have been done, since the pandemic started. There's been so much added pressure and burden and jobs added to all people, parents, everyone. And so there's so many people dropping out of the workforce. We've heard recently over 1 million women have dropped out of the workforce since the pandemic started. Margo and I think that number is actually probably even higher than that. So there's a lot of change that's going on right now with that. It's also important to think about, what are the considerations? What might happen to you if you pursue flexible work? What's important to think about? The first one, thinking about your current income. So as you think again across those 5 buckets, so not all of those options are going to result in lower pay, but some of them actually might. So it's important to take a hard look at your personal budget, see where you can sacrifice and look at that piece of it. But not only do you want to think about your current income, you also need to think about your future income. So what is that going to look like? Fidelity did a study where they looked at a woman who earned $75,000. She was a 35-year-old woman earning $75,000 a year. And they found out that she's going to lose $160,000 for just a 1-year career break. So it's never just about the salary. You miss out on networking, career growth, Social Security credits, retirement contributions. So you have to think long-term when you think about that break. You should think about interactions with others and kind of what you're looking for there. Margo and I are best of friends, but completely different people. Margo is an extrovert who loves working with others and being with others, and she gets energized by that. I'm the opposite. I'm an introvert. I'm very happy to work alone, and I'm okay with that. But you do need to think about that piece of it and how that's going to work with you for flexible work. You also need to think about your career path. So you might have been on a certain trajectory and pursuing this flexible work. This could change something for you. So you should think forward as to what that might change. You might have expected that this promotion is going to come next, but maybe it could potentially look different based on what you choose. You should also think about perceptions of you. So the people around you, again, if you prioritize this, are they going to think differently about you, and might that impact your career? And then finally, I think it's important to think about timing. I think it's much easier to think about flexible work when you don't necessarily need it. So can you anticipate any life changes coming? And just even start to gather information. Attending a webinar such like this, start to put those things in your head and start to gather some information that you need. And it's easier to do it when you don't necessarily need it right then. Okay, so Margo's going to take you through the next page about what do you do with flexible work? How do you even start it?
Thank you, Kara. And Kara took us through kind of why would you want to consider flexible work and what should you consider. And now we're going to really think about how do you manifest that if you would want to go down that path. So one helpful first step is to seek mentors. These mentors can either be people you've worked with before, or even some people even put together a personal board of directors, which is sort of one extreme, but seek people who've actually done what you're thinking of doing. So Kara's friend Erica, how she has reduced hours, that's an example. Speaking with someone who has literally done what you want to do can be very helpful, and they can mentor you through that process. Find what I call game changers. So when you think about your career and the things that you've done and the people who helped you, there are probably some people you haven't spoken to in a while who really went to bat for you at one point. Reconnecting with them can be very helpful, and people who already have shown they care about you. Reconnecting with them, telling them what you're thinking of doing, getting their feedback can be super helpful in the process. Another option is to connect with a coach, an executive coach, someone who is a subjective person, sort of walk beside you as you make this move. Now, there are so many different ways to find coaches these days. My one word of advice, actually, I am a certified coach, is get a referred coach. Don't just find someone online or someone with a splashy LinkedIn page. Definitely find someone through someone you know or through referral, but sometimes they can be extremely helpful in having you step back and thinking about the issues you might not be really reflecting on that are critical as you make any change. Networking. Networking is the big word of today. It's networking, regardless of if you want reduced hours, contract, owner, whatever it is, networking will help you. I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but networking is essential if you're outgoing, not outgoing, whatever it is. It's a critical part of anything you want to do. Ask your employer, hey, there's never been a better time. Kara told me when she heard the interest rates went up yesterday, they also spoke about how the ratio of jobs to employers, or I should say jobs to people. So there are 2 jobs now for every person who is looking for a job. So the power is in with the candidate. We'll get into that a little bit later, but now is the best time to ask your employer for whatever you want, frankly. Try it out. That might sound difficult, and perhaps could be. I actually have a friend who tried out his side gig while he was still working. He was at SpaceX and wanted to start a learning and development company, digital L&D, and he started building that out while he was working. And did it really slowly. It took him years, but finally he got to a point where he could actually pivot into that full time, leave SpaceX, and then feel comfortable that he had thought about the monetary aspect of his future, and didn't just quit his job. It actually pivoted into it more slowly. So that's another way to create your flexible work. So what is the future of flexible work? You can honestly get different answers based on who you're talking to and on any given day. So what I want to tie back, this is really relevant to regardless again of what type of flexible work you end up seeking out, whether it's alternate hours, reduced hours, contract, whatever it is, owner, this is relevant. So there are two different types, schools of thought right now. The first of which is on top, which is that, look, we're totally, nothing's ever going to be the same. We've changed, we've pivoted, flexibility is forever. We're never going back, ever. And then there's another perspective that once a recession hits, or once the job market becomes less on the power pivots back to the companies, there will be more of a demand for people to be back in the office. So both schools of thought, I think in some ways are actually correct. I think we will permanently be in more of a hybrid situation. However, I do believe that more companies will be stricter on that than they are right now. And we'll talk a little bit about that, but it's definitely a mix of both in my mind. So let's talk about it in the different, it's kind of fun to talk about this. Well, Kara and I think it is too, but there's really three different things. There's remote, totally remote. And then there's hybrid, which is when you're kind of required to be in the office a certain number of days, classically 2 to 3. And there's 100% in the office. So let's start with remote. If you're 100% remote, it means you literally don't have to ever go into the office. It doesn't mean you don't have to travel for work sometimes, but it means you don't have to actually be in an office. So Apple is an example of a company who said, hey, we're going to be hybrid. We want you back in. And there was a lot of, it actually hit the news, so you might have heard about it. A lot of folks there was major backlash. So they actually backpedaled and now they're remote. But other companies started off that way, DocuSign, Facebook, Salesforce. That whole remote aspect is part of their employer brand anyway, so it's not surprising. But when you think about the fully remote work, what are the benefits? And a lot of you brought it up in the poll we did, and Kara brought up as well. Childcare, saving money, not commuting, and more time to get work done. And it's interesting. A lot of people, as Kara mentioned, did buy homes in remote places so they left San Francisco or LA or New York and actually bought homes in smaller towns because the cost of living. And those people certainly want and need remote. Now, what's really helping the remote work, I'd say, what's helping the remote work effort right now on the employee side is the fact that COVID keeps pushing back dates when companies can safely require you to be in the office. So there are several companies I know of who have set dates, 4 different dates for people to come back to the office, that they then had to say, oh, no, we're kidding, not yet. So it doesn't help any company's story when they say, oh, we want you back, but not yet. So it's just remote's just becoming more the norm. And that's not going to change. And what I've found actually is people really would rather have to travel in my recruiting work, would rather have to travel than work in an office. Meaning if I say to you, the job's remote, but you will have to travel, say once every 3 weeks, people are more willing to do that than they are to have to go into an office on a hybrid basis. So I think what I heard from folks on the panel or on the poll, when I heard a sense of control, people really want control over their schedule. And if you can control when you're traveling, that's some control. When you think about hybrid, and that is, like I said, 2 to 3 days in the office, there are lots of elements that make this a little confusing right now for companies. So putting on, let's say McKinsey. McKinsey is a company I'm sure most of you have heard of. It's a consulting firm. They have established that, hey, you know what? We're experimenting. We don't know what's going to work right yet, but we're going to start this way. I think the way they started was actually not ideal. It's manager's discretion, which ultimately is very subjective and kind of unfair. Regardless, they did the right thing by saying, we're going to experiment with how we work in terms of this hybrid or remote piece and see what happens. That's actually, if you're an employer on this call, that's the best way. Just be open, say, we don't know what's going to work. Other companies have said, you know what, we're all in on hybrid. Intuit, Duolingo, Google. I will tell you, I have several clients who are on the hybrid spectrum and who have made that choice. And the thing to remember is you really need to be very careful about when you tell people to be in the office. So if you say, okay, everyone has to be in the office on Wednesday and the other 2 days are open to you, that's a problem because somebody might come in on a Monday and they might have a team of 10 people, say, and they're the only ones there. And then they start to get bitter and start to question the whole reason they're there at all. So then people slowly just stop coming in, only except on Wednesdays. So I think to make hybrid work, it has to be 3 days that actually people have to be there. So Tuesday through Thursday is what I'm seeing as the ultimate ideal schedule. Why is it good? Why is hybrid good? Well, it's a little bit of both. I mean, seeing people isn't terrible, right? So sometimes you want to go in the office and see your colleagues, and it allows for collaboration. So there's a lot of benefits to hybrid, and I really think that's where most companies want to know. 100% in the office. I don't know if you heard the news, but SpaceX and Tesla, essentially they have to be in the office 40 hours a week now. And Elon Musk was very verbal about that, and it hit the news. And I'm seeing all these LinkedIn posts now from mostly women, to go back to Kara said about women, just in the past 2 days, saying, hey, because of SpaceX rules now, I'm leaving, I'm open to work. And you see thousands of people liking these things. So I think there's a huge pushback on companies that are just in a draconian fashion with seemingly lack of empathy for people, just requiring 100% in the office. So I find that fascinating that there's this huge effort or huge kind of shared thinking around this now and support for people who are being forced to work in the office 40 hours a week. Goldman Sachs, no surprise, they're very hardcore, very hard driving. So they're an example of a company that's also requiring you to be back in. Now, why is this a good thing? Well, hey, collaboration is easier in person. Let's be honest. I mean, there are tons of ways to collaborate in other ways, but it is easier when you're sitting near someone. And separation from work and home life is not a bad thing too. Sometimes it can be good for people. And it can also help with your career trajectory. If you're at a law firm or consulting firm and you're never in the office, it's unlikely you'll make partner. I mean, you really do need to have that in-person sort of experience. And companies are adding amenities to try to make it more attractive. So Google had Lizzo. There was a concert where Lizzo came, which obviously is super extreme. That's an extreme example. Other companies have snack stand, like pop-up stands or happy hours with the CEO, and lots of involving alcohol, usually events. And so another thing too, someone brought this up in the chat, loneliness. Like if you don't have a spouse or a pet and you're alone all day in your house, that's probably not good for everyone. Some people might like it, like Kara, just kidding. But like you really actually, if it's 100% remote, that can sometimes be less ideal for mental health. So that's another reason why I think hybrid is going to be where people land. Okay. I think that's all I wanted to say. And I will say that as a recruiter right now, most people are requiring remote. They do not want to commute. It's remarkable. I have one job that is in office 2-3 days a week that I've been trying to fill for a long time because people are just like, nope, remote only. So I think that'll pivot, that'll shift as the economy starts to slow down a little in terms of the job growth will slow down. Anyway, moving on to the next slide. Sorry, thanks.
So this is our poll. We have one more poll to put
Oh, yes.
So Hannah, if you wouldn't mind pulling up this last poll here.
Okay, good. Well, the professor at Stanford is probably right then when he said most people want hybrid. Then that, so it's a really hybrid and remote, and very few of you want to be in the office, which is 100%, which is exactly what I'm hearing. Thank you. That's helpful. Kara, anything to say on that one? Nope. Okay. So moving on. This is really based, this slide is really for the people who want to do contract and project based. So there are lots of different ways you can engage with companies and platforms that will enable you to get work. Not all of us like to sell. And if you're a contractor, oftentimes you have to do that. So some of the platforms I want to highlight for you today, and there are so many I could put up here, but just to highlight a couple. Catalent is one where they'll have projects from companies and they'll interview people who could potentially work on these projects, and you sign up to be one of their consultants, and it's kind of a formal process. Upwork is really more of a marketplace, which is much more open to the public. So you could go on right now and say you're good at finance or anything with legal, anything really. You can post yourself up there as someone who is able to do that work. And then if someone needs you, they interact with you. So it's more of a marketplace. There are other companies that exist that are really very niche. So if you're really good with HR and you want to do HR projects, Gig Talent is one that's really very, very popular and successful. So you would become one of their consultants, and when they have a project, they'll call you and say, hey, do you want to do this? Rosie, We Are Rosie is the same, but it's for marketing. You can find a company for almost any talent you have, whether it's finance, tech, there's probably a niche group that connects you with employers who want you to do work for them. It's growing. So it's a wonderful opportunity if that is the world in which you want to live in, the contract world. So the last slide, how to succeed. So let's pull all this together. Regardless of what you choose, how do you make it work? Number one, really think about your personal brand. Who are you? And what do you represent? So for me, I'm a savvy and speedy sort of HR talent acquisition person. And that's me. I said that in one sentence. That's who I am. Kara has her own personal brand, but you just have to get to that sentence, right? Who are you? And as Kara said, really get in front of those trade-offs. That's so critical. A friend of mine left a very high-paying job to become a coach. And when you become a coach, you initially don't make a lot of money at all. So she planned for that, planned for literally 2 years of not much income. So just be super thoughtful about what you're going to face. Enforce boundaries, not only with yourself, but with the people with whom you're working. So for example, if you tell yourself, I only want to work 20 hours a week, then pretty much keep yourself to that. And it's the same with the people you're working with. I was a contractor with a smaller boutique search firm, and I didn't enforce boundaries up front that I would need vacation. And I actually went to visit my father, who's very sick. And I was running 4 searches at the time and asked them to take over while I was with my father, and they didn't. So I couldn't really see my dad when I was out in Pennsylvania. And that's actually one of the reasons that I started my own company, because I found that unacceptable. But shame on me in some ways for not saying it up front, right? So before you engage in any contract relationship with any group, just be really clear on what you expect and what you want, and it'll make everything easier. Set check-ins. So with yourself and with think about and with the people supporting you, your mentors, your coach. So set check-ins every 6 months saying, am I happy? Do I still want to be doing this? Is this something that makes sense for me now? And is it what I want to be doing? So it's important to do that for yourself. Celebrate. I have a friend who owns a really successful marketing research firm, and she, at the beginning, when she first started about 20 years ago, she would celebrate all the little wins, like her first client, her first check, her first big logo, Taco Bell, I think it was. And then over time, she got very successful, and she decided to stop doing the work because she was bored with it. And we realized that it was because she stopped celebrating herself and what she achieved. So celebrate yourself, invite others to celebrate you. Just do that. I promise it'll help. And then network regularly. If you remember one thing from this whole session today, please let it be the networking piece, because that is critical to you succeeding in any of the realms you want to enter into. But what's really important, the caveat on networking, is that you have to do what you enjoy or you won't do it. Some people enjoy one-on-one, let's meet for coffee. Some people enjoy LinkedIn networking. Others enjoy going to conferences, which are happening in person now. Others enjoy talks like this. Whatever your preferred mode of networking is, just do it. There's no right or wrong. So speaking of networking, if you want to move to the next slide, Kara and I would love to connect with you on LinkedIn. We're very grateful that you spent time with us today. We love talking about this topic and think it's really important and are really excited to be able to connect with you on LinkedIn. So I think at this point, questions are welcome.
Oops.
Alrighty, I will get started here with questions. Again, a reminder, if you have a question, you are more than welcome to enter that in the chat or use the Q&A feature, and we will be sure to get those answered. To start things off here, of the 5 types of flexible work that you've discussed today, which is the most common, and what would be the easiest to start?
Interesting.
I think okay. Can I jump in, Kara? I think it depends on your situation. I mean, if you're let's see, I'm thinking of all of them, like remote, reduced hours, alternative hours, contract, and owner. I think probably the easiest one is contractor, because there's so many people who would hire contractors now, because it's hard to hire people in general. So a lot of people are hiring contractors. So that's probably the easiest one to just do quickly and with the least almost effort and pain. That's my perspective.
Yeah, and most popular, I would say, probably is remote hybrid. I mean, that's one, so many people have been forced into it due to the pandemic. So
Certainly very flexible, that one for sure. Okay, when interviewing for a new job, how can we best inquire about where the employer stands on this issue?
That's a great question, Kara. I hate to take them all, but I'll take this one. So the good news is this is something that it's not like you shouldn't go there question, right? This is something you should be asking literally in the first conversation with the recruiter, because it's not it's completely legit now to understand that from the very beginning. And I push on it. If they say, okay, I'll tell you something. I've got an employer, a client who's thinking of going from 3 days to 1 day. If I were not a good recruiter, I would say, oh, it's 1 day. It's going to be 1 day. And I wouldn't even mention the 3 days. Push, make sure you really understand their model. Are they changing it? Is it just a temporary thing? Are they always going to be 1 day? Could it go back to 3? But yes, you should 100% ask that question.
I'm kind of going again with, how best to have that conversation. How do you approach your boss to have a flexible work if they are very against flexible work? And they use the example here, I'm 100% in person, but I could do 99% of my work remotely.
Well, Amy, I don't know if you work for like a tiny company or a big company. So let's just assume you work for a small company, then I would go in and try to speak to your boss's needs. So say, I'm making this up, Kyle, I can get my work done probably even more effectively if I'm home. Would you be open to doing an experiment and trying it for 2 weeks? If you work for a large company, those policies are classically pushed down from above. So that person won't have the ability to impact change for you. It really does depend on the size of the company and the power or decision rights of the person you work for.
Okay, another question here was, most of the companies that you've listed or talked about here so far have been larger. Talk a little bit about small businesses, particularly nonprofits, and how they can navigate hybrid work, please.
I mean, I think one of the things that, I'll take this one, that you can do a bit is, given the smaller nature, is kind of work with the team and see if you can kind of try to come to a bit of consensus that way. But as Margo mentioned earlier, I think, going into it with, hey, that we're going to try this, not like this is our policy, this is what it is. Like, I think, doing those trial basis and seeing what works, seeing where some of the pitfalls are, and, some of the challenges if things get dropped during it. I think keeping that maybe and keeping good track of that. So if it doesn't work and everyone has to come back to full time, having that support behind, why in person has to play a role.
Okay, getting a lot of questions in here through. One here is, what resources have been most beneficial for you in studying this topic? Aside maybe from your own personal experiences.
It's two things. Yeah, it's I think we both speak to this. It's what we read about, but the challenge there is what you read is different. Like in whatever, the New York Times and Wall Street Journal and Forbes might have very different perspectives on the same topic. I personally see it from the work I do every day. So I'm super close to it. But I think Kara, you can speak to it. I think you're just an avid reader.
Yeah, even, I think back even to in 2005, when I started my company, what I did then, like I read a bunch of books, but one thing that has been really helpful to me kind of throughout navigating stuff like this is having somebody like Margo in my life. We are in completely different industries. I mean, yesterday we had a 20-minute conversation about compensation and like learning, and it's nice to have somebody that isn't your competition, but yet is in business, and it's just having a really good sounding board to run things by. And we're constantly going to each other with, this happened with this client, like, how would you have done this? Or what should I have done in that? So, surrounding yourself with people and talking through it, understanding how other companies are doing it, I think is just incredibly valuable at this time.
Yeah, there's an expression, connection is protection. Like having people, to Kara's point, in your life, and you can fortify those relationships now. It's not like you have to have them now, you can create them. But having those people to talk to bounce things off really does help.
As a student getting ready to enter the job market for their first time, what do you recommend is within their rights to say on their preferences of work?
I would say it's more of it's not right so much, it's more of a question, because the company is going to have a policy that has nothing to do with your preferences. So it's more about seeking out what you want as opposed to saying, this is what I want. So if they are going to allow remote, it will already be a policy. And just because you say, I want remote, they're not going to just let you do it. So I think it's more about understanding the company's policy and seeing if that policy lines up with what you want. Kara, anything to add on that?
I think too, if you get down the road with a company and let's say you're close to accepting a job offer, if you can try to speak to some other people in the company too and really understand, like, okay, they say it's remote and maybe they have this policy, but is it really like that? Or what are the hours really like? And so if you can just kind of to Margo's point of networking, right? Like look through LinkedIn and see, maybe your high school band teacher knows somebody that works there, and reach out to them and say, hey, could you connect me with this person, and have those conversations as well.
Yeah,
I think would help a lot.
Great. And just to emphasize again, be very clear with them on, is this your policy now or could it change? Because no one's set anything in stone really yet. I mean, even Tesla could come back and change it now that there's all this backlash. So I really push on that. Like, how permanent is this policy?
Okay, a couple more here if you both have some time. What did you wish you would have done differently when you started working in a flexible work environment? If there is anything.
Are you want to start?
I wish that I would have had a couple things. I wish I would have had a bit more confidence in what I was doing. And this was back in 2005 where flexible work wasn't really a thing. People didn't work remotely and that piece of it. But I did work, reduced hours when I started my company, and I was pretty almost like ashamed of it or scared of it. And I wish I had just been maybe a little more clear with clients up front, like, this is what I'm doing. And I think nowadays that's just normal. Like, this is my schedule and this is when I work. So I wish I would have had more confidence in myself kind of going in.
Yeah, and for me, I think I mentioned on the last slide, but I think as a contractor, I think being really clear on what you're expecting in terms of PTO or support from them is really critical from the onset. And that's my biggest regret, that I didn't do that. I took it as an assumption, but don't assume anything when you're creating a construct with someone around contract work.
Great advice. Again, opposite end of that, what is your greatest reward with your current environments and your flexible work? And maybe some examples where it's really worked well for you.
I mean, this one. Oh, you go. I'll go ahead.
I think, there is nothing like getting a new client or a big project, or, that feeling is unlike, anything I had when I was in the corporate world, because I know it kind of all comes down to me. So, that is always exciting, and I still celebrate it, and it's great to add somebody new. I will also say one way that flexible work has been great for me is I have a daughter with significant health issues. And so there was a time years ago where she was going to have a couple surgeries, and I was taking 6 weeks off, but she had some issues. It didn't work out. She had many more surgeries, but I took 4 months off, and I was able to do that. I didn't have to ask anybody about it. I just did it. It just happened. So I'm very appreciative, again, that I thought about the life that I wanted to have and wanted to have that flexibility. And it's really, paid off for me that way.
Yeah, my answer is probably a little shorter. It's all about control for me. I just love to be able to control my schedule. I hated sitting in big meeting rooms thinking this meeting is such a waste of time. I would rather be home, or this is a waste of an hour. I'll never get back. Like, when you own your own thing or do your own thing, you control a lot more. There's risk, and there are times when I'm like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. But then the ultimate, to Kara said, not only getting the clients and doing the great work, but it's the control. Control apparently is the biggest cause of lack of control. Apparently, is the biggest cause of stress for anybody. So I think that's a lot of what's going on right now. It's about control.
Yeah, and with the pandemic, ever changing, right? Like, many are just not in control in their environment, right? And it's constantly evolving.
Yeah.
Do either of you approach your work differently in examples where you've been remote versus in the office? Any advice on best practices for remote work versus being in the office?
I think one thing that I do, because I don't really see any of my clients in person anymore, and I know it sounds silly, and I know lots of people have talked about it, but I always try to make sure, like, we get that connection piece at the beginning of the meeting, like this, because again, I know I'm not traveling with them, so I'm not creating, I'm not spending 2 or 3 days with them and creating that kind of deeper connection. So I always have to try harder on a Zoom call, on an email I send. I might try to ask them something personal just to kind of build those relationships, deeper, because they aren't happening in person.
Yeah, I love that, Kara. One thing I do is I try to figure out the way the person wants to communicate. To Kara's point, you're not seeing them in person. And I have clients who only text me. I have clients who only email, and I have clients who only call. But you need to figure out what they like. And I just ask them sometimes, or I'll just sort of figure out by the way they're communicating. But figuring out how your client likes, or employer, whatever boss, likes to communicate in a virtual world makes all the difference.
This moment, I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat. I will give you all another quick chance here if there are anything. In the meantime, thank you both so much. We cannot, thank you enough for taking time out of your very busy schedules. You're both female-owned entrepreneurs, and that is such an exciting opportunity for us to learn from you both, especially from your advice and personal examples that you were so willing to share. This topic is certainly so relevant, and we are so grateful again just to hear from you both. And again, I just want to thank you all for coming, for listening to today's talk, for having great thoughtful questions. Again, please, feel free to connect with Kara and Margo on LinkedIn if you have any further questions. I'm sure they would both be willing to assist you maybe that way. And we have other Tech Talks available throughout the next month coming here. So please check those out as well. And the link of today's chat will be sent to you tomorrow afternoon. So again, thank you all so much. Have a great day. Enjoy your Thursday.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks.